Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 85 of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your coach, Angela Pugh. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Hopefully you are having an awesome and action-packed week. And when I say action-packed, I mean, hopefully you are taking a ton of actions to support yourself staying sober and being the person you dream of being. And that's what we're going to talk about today, actually. What do you have to do to be successful in sobriety? Are you doing those things? Are you taking steps the right direction? Or are you kind of spinning in circles, feeling like confused and lost and like alcohol is still running your life? You definitely don't want to stay in that place, that's for sure. And before we deep dive into that, let's do a quick shout out with a letter from a client who did private sessions with me last year. And just to give you some background, she did give me permission to use her first name. And let me give you a little background on exactly how she worked with me, because we can kind of structure working with me is structured a million different ways. It's very flexible. So everybody kind of does their own thing. We spend a little bit of time figuring out what works for each person. So Lynn Marie worked with me for about 3 months, and she did twice a month. And I don't have any commitments, right? Like she didn't decide she was going to do 3 months up front and pay for all those sessions up front. I am a little bit commitment phobic, and I don't like committing to things long term. So I guess me not requiring any commitment is more about my own baggage than anything else. But I let people just go session by session. Or, typically if, a session with me is $297, if somebody wants to do 2 at a time, I'll do 2 for $500, right? So it'll save you $100 if you pay for 2 at a time. But again, I don't require any long-term commitment or whatever. So she did about 3 months, 2 times a month. She paid as she went. And so this is what she sent me recently. And she told me I could use it on the podcast or website or whatever I wanted. So here goes. Lynn Marie writes, being an alcoholic can feel like an incredibly lonely journey. Friends and family can be confused about how to support you, and it can often feel like the problems you face are only yours and you are alone. Doubts and fears creep up constantly, and you begin to wonder if there is anyone who can help you, and is it all even worth it? When I discovered Angela's coaching and started doing individual sessions with her, I began to understand that what I was experiencing on my recovery path was, totally normal. I didn't have a flashing sign on my forehead that said sober weirdo, and the work I'm doing is important. Since committing to this work with Angela, I have been more comfortable just being who I am unapologetically. I love what I've learned, and I know that the progress I've made really does make a difference, especially to my friends and family. Angela is so relatable, and her sense of humor and acceptance is inspiring. So I never fail to show up to my sessions, ready to listen and do the work. I always feel better, more connected to my life with clarity and energy after every call. Sobriety should be fun, not a bore, and Angela's guidance always steers you towards seeking the joy in your recovery and valuing yourself no matter how you do recovery. Lynn Marie, I so freaking love you. And I'm so proud of you for making a real commitment to yourself in your sobriety so you can get all those rewards that come with it. You ought to be able to enjoy your kids laughing, and you should be able to fully engage in your life, and you shouldn't be robbed of your self-confidence and feel like a burden. And you don't have to. You shouldn't be limited because you don't know exactly what to do. I've helped thousands of people just like you reclaim their lives, and it's literally so exciting. I love this stuff. And if you have some questions about working with me, you guys know I offer a free consultation and you can get all your questions answered. We can jump on a quick call, figure out what the best course of action is for you and get you started immediately. Easy peasy. It's at www.myrecoverytoolbox.com right on the homepage. It takes a whole 15 seconds. www.myrecoverytoolbox.com. And of course, I will put that link in the show notes so you can get there right from your podcast app. I love getting those emails, you guys, because it reminds me why we work so hard, right? It reminds me of the rewards instead of always being inundated with problems and struggles. Like there's so much joy and good energy and self-esteem that comes with being an action taker, like being willing to get in there and do the work and be committed even when it feels crappy. And I am thrilled to be an action taker right by your side. You are definitely not alone in this journey. So let's jump into this topic today. Speaking of being an action taker, let's get into some of the specifics about what it takes to be successful in sobriety. I know you want to live a life that you can enjoy, and many of us have really kind of disengaged from our lives and we're withdrawn and isolated. And I know you want to get re-engaged and lose some of that anxiety and rebuild that confidence. So how the heck do you pull that off? We're going to talk about some of the key elements that are absolutely non-negotiable. And remember too that all of this is an inside job. Meaning it takes place inside of you, within yourself, your conversations with yourself, the committee, the messages you're sending to yourself, the stories you're telling yourself. This is all within you. And there's good news and bad news with that, right? The good news is it's totally in your control. You, your thoughts, your actions, all of that is inside your hula hoop. So you've totally got this. The bad news is there's no one to blame but you. So it's like you are your CEO. You make your decisions. You take action or choose not to take action. It's all on you. You don't have anybody else to blame. So that's the good news and the bad news. You know, a spouse or a family member that doesn't understand addiction doesn't make you drink. Right? It might trigger some things. You feel alone, excluded, or misunderstood, insecure, scared. Like all of those feelings may be a result of your family or spouse not understanding, but that doesn't make you drink. You decide to drink. You decide to go to the liquor store, and you decide to lift that glass or that bottle to your mouth. A job you don't like, or a boss you don't like, or coworkers, that stuff doesn't make you drink. It pushes some buttons and stirs up some feelings, and you have a choice to learn to deal with those feelings and start to understand them and learn some coping skills, or make the choice to drink, right? I know you get this, and sometimes it's hard to hear, but it is the truth. You know, I am my responsibility. And the number one most important non-negotiable of my everyday is making sure my mindset is in the right place. This is why I made that whole mindset makeover email series, to give you tools to start doing that work on your own and to understand the importance of it, right? I make it so easy for you. I just send it right to your inbox. Like all you have to do is open your email and click, and you've got incredible tools. So you hear me say this all the time. If you want to feel better and do better, you have to take action. And one of the easiest and best ways to start taking action is working on that inner dialogue you're having with the committee all day long and make it work in your favor. You have to feed the committee good, healthy, strong messages so it will start to shift from attacking you all the time to encouraging you all the time. And it takes practice. It takes practice to develop the practice. And that means you have to get started, right? So let me break down my process of implementing a new practice in my life. So you can see, honestly, you can see that there isn't a perfect process and it's all trial and error. So I'm going to use this book as an example, and you're going to love this because you're really going to get like an inside look at my personal repeated failure, okay? There's this book called The Master Key System. It's a daily practice in visualization, like millions of people have used it and have changed their lives in epic ways. And you know I'm all about epic. I love some epic stuff. So about 4 years ago, I decided I was going to do the Master Key practice. And I think it's like 15 minutes a day. You read the book, it tells you what you're visualizing that day, then you sit down and do it. And by the way, I love visualization and I do it every day. So you would think this would be a natural fit for me, right? I literally got through about the third practice and I totally stopped doing it. And I've done this at least, 3 or 4 times with just the Master Key System. Like I start it, of course I go through all those same thought processes like, oh, I'm really going to do it this time. I'm going to be more committed than ever this time. I'm really going to make it through. By the way, if you do the whole thing, it takes like a year. So this is not a baby commitment, which is exactly probably why I don't follow through. Anyway, that's one. I'll give you another one. I decided a couple of years ago that I wanted to do yoga for 30 days, every day for 30 days yoga. And this is crazy too, because I've done this before more than once. Like it's a pretty normal practice for me because if you just work out the same way all the time, you get bored, your body gets bored. So just to mix things up a bit, literally probably a couple of times a year, I will do 30 days of yoga or 30 days of Pilates. And I do the same thing. Like all of a sudden I make it like 2.5 weeks and I fall off. I'll have a day that like I didn't plan well. I'll get behind on things because I don't have my shit together. And the first thing that goes out the window is the yoga I said I was going to do. I tell you this so you understand that no one is perfect at this stuff. There are other things that I do great, like not drinking or my podcast, my daily mindset practice. I'm killing it at those things. And there are plenty of other things that I fail at constantly. And I don't mind failing. Failing's just a part of living. The important thing is what you do after you fail. The only difference between me and other people is that I will never stop trying, right? Like when I fail at something, I take a step back. I take responsibility for whatever I didn't do well, right? Because it's always my responsibility. I'll figure out the lesson in the failure and I'll try again. I'll tell you my greatest hurdle to get over in almost everything I fail at is laziness. My laziness allows me to make excuses so I don't follow through on all the things I need to do to be absolutely committed to something. Like I'll say I'm committed to doing it, but then in the evening, okay, like in the 30 days of yoga thing. I was doing that at home, by the way. I wasn't even like going to the gym and going to a class. I was doing yoga at home. I found this girl I love on YouTube and I would just do a yoga practice every morning. And I'll say I'm committed to it, right? But if I'm going to get up first thing in the morning and do a yoga practice at my house, that means that there are some things I have to do the night before so that I have the extra 30 or 45 minutes or whatever to do yoga in the morning, right? So I'll say I'm committed, but then in the evening when I need to be getting some extra things done for the next day to create time to do yoga in the morning, then I'll tell myself I'm tired, or I just want to lay down, or I don't really need to do this stuff tonight. I can do it tomorrow. Then tomorrow rolls around and I'm already 30 minutes behind because I didn't take care of those extra things the night before. And then my phone will ring and I'll be caught on a call for 45 minutes. And what do you think is the first thing that gets pushed to the back burner when I'm now an hour behind? Of course, it's the new thing I'm supposedly committed to. Because I was being lazy. I was being lazy the night before, not doing those things in advance to set myself up to be successful. My commitment suffered. Then my practice suffered. Then the committee has all this information to use as ammunition all day long, telling me I'm lazy, I didn't try hard enough, or I know better, or it's ridiculous, I'm still making these amateur mistakes at this age, I should be better by now, and blah, 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 all the things the committee likes to ramble on about. And trust me, I go through this no less than 10 times a week, okay? In various areas of my life, trying various things. The only difference is I will readjust, work on my mindset to get it stronger, and I'll try again. That doesn't always mean I try the same thing over and over. Sometimes it does, but not always. I definitely had to step away from trying that whole master key system thing because I tried and effed it up a couple of times, and I can't quite pinpoint why that thing is such a struggle for me. Maybe it's because I already do a similar practice and it just feels like too much. I don't know. It may also be because in that period of my life when I was trying that, I had a lot of other emotional things happening, and maybe I just didn't have the bandwidth at that time to handle a practice that was so regimented and so disciplined and long-term. I don't know, maybe with the growth that I've had in these last few years, maybe I could handle it now. I don't know. I think if I get really honest about it, I think it's because I'm an alcoholic, and by nature, I am rebellious and obstinate, and I don't like anyone telling me what to do. So just the structure and the confines of that master key system makes my inner 5-year-old come out and throw a temper tantrum and rebel against it, and I may never be grown up enough to do it. I don't know. But deeper than that is just a good old-fashioned lack of commitment. I know I am perfectly capable of being committed to things. I am super committed to my clients, my podcast, you as my listeners and members of my Facebook group. Of course, I'm super committed to my sobriety. You couldn't pay me $1 million to slack on any one of those things. So I know I'm capable. But if I don't get my mindset right and understand all the moving parts to the commitment, then I won't be able to follow through appropriately and be successful at whatever the thing is. And the next major issue is when you say you're committed to sobriety, but you're only committed until you get too uncomfortable. And this is where understanding all the moving parts and planning ahead will make all the difference too. If you get caught in a moment you're not prepared for, you'll find yourself in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. You'll get overwhelmed and freaked out in a split second, caught with your pants down, so to speak, and you'll have no idea what to say. If you know you struggle with boredom, then I strongly suggest you create a list of 100 things you can do to overcome boredom. Instead of waiting until you're in that moment bored, which will then trigger fear, which then triggers anxiety, and you have no solutions because you didn't plan for your success or create resources to support your commitment. Right? Like I hear people say all the time, one of my biggest triggers is boredom. Well, what that means to me is the next time you're trying to get sober again, you need to have some tools to deal with boredom. Like if you already know that's a trigger, then put some solutions in place, The beauty is it doesn't even take energy to create a list. Like spend a few minutes and Google 100 ways to overcome boredom, and Google will give you all the answers. It will do all the work for you. And that's how I have to make everything work with my laziness, right? I have to rely on Google to help me. And if you know you struggle with anxiety or negative thoughts or loneliness or you isolate, then do things in advance to counteract those things. If you get lonely, then reach out to some of your friends and family and schedule a few coffee or lunch dates, or schedule to meet a friend at a meeting, or take a walk, or go to the museum. If you want or need new friends, then go make them. People are not going to show up at your house, knock on your door, and ask to be your friend. You have to go places and meet people and say hi if you want to make friends. I'm not saying it's super easy. I'm saying it takes action and a little bit of energy to get what you want. Google how to overcome anxiety and see all the resources Google gives you. Hit up YouTube or Amazon for books to learn more about those little things that nag you. Almost all of us have negative self-talk. We are emotionally immature. We are codependent. Most of us have other compulsions, right? Like food or sex or gambling or love or shopping. All of those are things you can spend time on the internet learning about and building up resources to start teaching you how to cope with those issues so you can feel better. If you are comfortable in your recovery and you want to set bigger goals, learn about that, or get a session with me to work on your specific struggles or goals or creating a life strategy. If your credit is bad and it stresses you out, then spend time starting to learn how to fix it. And there are a million resources for that. And a lot of the things you can do for your credit are totally free. You just need to spend the time figuring out what those things are. If you want to make more money, then start looking at ways to make more money. Clean houses, detail cars, give guitar lessons, or teach people photography or painting, whatever talent you have or trade Figure out how to do that and make some extra money. Volunteer. There are thousands of organizations that need volunteers always. Volunteer at an animal shelter. Cook dinner at Ronald McDonald House. Volunteer at an expo or a conference or a gala or a fundraiser for an organization you love. I hope you're getting the idea here that the possibilities literally are endless. The key is to have some options ready before you are in a vulnerable moment. And the last thing I'm going to touch on is willingness. You have to be willing to do the things that will help you. Do not be the person that rejects every idea and then you can't figure out why it's not working, right? Don't be the person that has a problem for every solution, that says no to every suggestion, or has a reason why nothing will work for you, right? Don't be the yeah, but person. Yeah, I know that works for some people, but that won't work for me because whatever. Yeah, I've tried that, but... Don't be the yeah, but person. Being willing means you're willing to do whatever it takes. You're willing to try other suggestions because your best ideas have not gotten you very far. You're willing to be open-minded because closed-minded and thinking you have all the answers gets you drunk. And finally, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable because life is uncomfortable. Sobriety is not any more uncomfortable than many other things that we endure. We tell ourselves this crazy story that sobriety is so hard. Maybe it's too hard and I don't know if I can do it. But that's all BS. I promise you, my recovery has never been as uncomfortable as some of the trauma I've endured. My recovery has never hurt as badly as when I've had my heart broken. It has never felt as bad as losing a pet, or as horrible as losing my grandmother, or any of my close friends who have died. My recovery has never been that bad. It does not serve you to tell yourself this story that sobriety is awful or that it's too hard. Life is hard. And If my sobriety was awful or so hard or so boring, if sobriety sucked, I wouldn't continue to do it. And this is your mindset. That is your choice, right? You make the choice to sit around and feel awful about it, or to take action, be an action taker, and make your recovery kick ass. If you sit around obsessing about how hard it is, I imagine it won't feel great. But if you practice thinking about the rewards and taking action to make sure your thoughts are shifting to be more positive, if you take action to set yourself and your life up for success, then you'll know sobriety is not so hard. MS is hard. Parkinson's is hard, because those things are entirely out of your control. But as long as you don't have a drink, you have choices to make. And we've totally got this. Like, we can do this thing. I hope all of this makes sense to you guys. And I gave a ton of tools in this thing that you can utilize in your favor. There was a lot of ideas that I just rattled off that you can use all of them to set yourself up to do really, really well. If you've relapsed and you're starting over at day one, these are all the things that you need to be doing on day one to make sure you're creating a safe space for yourself, to make sure you are collecting tools and resources to make sure your sobriety is safe this time, right? It's not a big deal to fail. What matters is what you do after you fail. And you just have to learn the lesson, take responsibility for your part, and try harder to do better with what you learned this time. That's all any of us do. Just never stop trying. That's all, okay? Never stop trying. And if you love this episode and these tools were super helpful, make sure you share it, right? Let's be of service and help one another and support one another. Share the episode with a friend that might be struggling or looking for ideas, all right? And again, if you want to schedule a consult with me, I will put that link right in the show notes. Like I said, we can figure out the best course of action for you. Everything's individual. It's no cookie cutter stuff, right? We just work with you and what works for you. So I'll put that link in the show notes for you guys. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I will see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.